Hey guys, new video, and like I mentioned in the last video, I am going to edit some work in this video. Some work that I took in the previous video. So if you want to see how I took the shots that I'm going to edit now, please do watch the last video where I am photographing close-up flowers in the field with my macro lens. I have my laptop here, so I'm going to work on a few photos in Lightroom, and I'm going to teach you how to add this very, dreamy effects that I like so much. Gonna teach you some techniques, how to put focus on certain parts, how to add a little bit of a dreamy touch to your images. And I'm gonna do all of that in Lightroom. And before I get started on those images, I do want to mention that I just released a completely new Lightroom course with more than 20 lectures, 18 included raw files to follow along. And that course is available now. I will put it in the description. It's still at a 10% discount for, I think, about 2 days upon the release of this video. Anyway, if you want that 10% discount, make sure to get it. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee if you buy it. So if you don't like the course, you can simply just send me an email and request the refund. Of course, I hope you like the course. I hope you like the techniques. And gonna show you some right now in Lightroom, but in the full course there is so much more. Of course, I am working on, this kind of images, but also landscape, cityscape, nightscapes, animals, everything landscape and nature. Anyway, enough about that. Let's dive into these images and start working in Lightroom. Alright, so here we are in the develop module of Lightroom, and I am going to show you how I edit this shot, and after that we are going to edit this shot with this bee. Well, let's go back to the first shot. Let's press I, and we can see here it was taken with my 90mm macro lens at f2.8, wide open, fast shutter speed, handheld. And again, if you want to see how I take this shot, please check my previous video on YouTube, where you can see me take this shot in the field. Well, first I need to kind of look what I want to achieve here. And I can already see, like when I first look at this, like the focus is on the flowers, looks very nice. The surroundings are very dreamy, which is exactly what I wanted. But this part here, you can see it's a little bit too bright compared to the rest. I want to make the flower in the middle brighter as well. This a little bit darker, and overall just clean up the shot and add a lot of, softness around the sharp part in the middle, and then make that middle part maybe a little bit more colorful, sharper and brighter, so that all the focus immediately goes to the middle. Now let's take a look at the histogram here on the top right. The histogram looks good. All the data is kind of in the middle. We are not clipping anything on the right, not clipping anything on the left, so the histogram looks very nice. All right, so let's start to work on this. First thing, we are going to just, I call this kind of balance out the image, work a little bit on the highlights and the shadows to bring out the detail, reduce these bright highlights that I was talking about. So let's start with that. Let's just reduce the highlights, see what happens, and immediately we see these super bright highlights are getting much less. Actually, I can just easily completely reduce the highlights, but then also we reduce the highlights in the middle a lot. So let's not do that. I'm gonna actually do that maybe in a local adjustments and not in a global adjustment. Let's try the shadows a bit, see, and that makes it a little bit dreamy, a little bit less contrast. I like contrasty images, but with this kind of images, less contrast is actually good because we want to add a little bit of a dreamy atmosphere. All right, so actually we don't need to do that much to the shadows, the highlights and the contrast, because this photo already looks nice. So let's start to work immediately on this bottom part. I'm gonna press M. That brings up the graduated filter, here the graduated mask, and we just pull it over the bottom, and then we can decrease the highlights only at the bottom, and that is much better. Maybe even decrease the whole exposure a little bit to get rid of those very bright highlights. And instead of pressing M, we can also press Shift M right here and just pull it over this part. So Shift M, that's a radial mask. And then we can do the same thing here, reduce the highlights in this part. Maybe even this is still a little bit too bright, so we can do the same. We can add another mask, a radial filter only over this part, and again reduce the highlights, maybe even bring down the exposure a little bit. Okay, so it's very small changes, but this balances out the image, making those parts, those very bright parts, a little bit less bright. Okay, so then let's work a little bit on the crop, because there's a lot of empty space here on the right. So we can actually crop in the image a little bit. It's a very high resolution image. I'm shooting on my A7R5, so I have plenty of resolution to work with. So I can definitely crop it in a little bit, maybe even, you know, change a little bit the angle coming from the, you know, something like that. And now the frame is more filled, I would say. I think that's a nicer composition. In the field, I try to, of course, make a good composition, but later when I see it on the big screen on the computer, I often change the composition slightly. If we press I again, we can see I still have almost 8,000 pixels here, so no problem at all cropping my image a little bit here. So yeah, I like that. So let's work a little bit on the colors, add some vibrance and a little bit of saturation maybe. And immediately I see maybe the image can be a little bit colder. Let's try the white balance. You know, this is a little bit of matter of preference. You can of course use this picker here to select white, and well, you think maybe this white balance is, you know, correct. But I kind of like the previous white balance more. A little bit of magenta. I really like magenta. Can go slightly to the green and then maybe slightly to the blue end, you know, to make it a little bit, yeah. That's a matter of preference, really, the white balance. I don't care that much about the accurate white balance. I really care about, you know, my own perspective of color. So then, like I said, I wanted to work a little bit on this middle part. So of course we can make a big radial filter here in the middle, what I just do, and then make it a little bit brighter. We can do that. What we can also do is, you know, we have this radial filter here, and we can actually say intersect mask with, and then select subject. And I have no idea if this is going to work on this image. We can just try, because Lightroom often detects the main subject very well, and you can actually see it does detect it very well. You see? So now, whatever I do, I use it on the subject, on the flower. So I can make this flower just a tiny bit brighter and maybe even give it a little bit more saturation, just a little bit. And you can see it's a tiny change, but look at that. Immediately it pops out so much more. Yeah. And this is maybe, you know, this is maybe too much here. So then we can work even more on this mask. We have this mask now, and we can say subtract. And I can say subtract maybe linear gradient, and then I can simply just drag over this. Right? And then I remove this part from the mask. So this is how we can make precise masks to work very selectively on parts of the image. Yeah, I really already starting to like it, but yeah, I want to add more softness around this middle part. Much more softness, also this part and this part. So what we can do is do again, Shift M, make a big radial gradient around it, and we can actually invert it. So now I select everything except for this middle part. And now I'm going to show you some tricks. I can actually make it a little bit less, you know, feathered, this mask. Now we're selecting only everything around. I'm going to teach you some trick to make dreamy parts in your photo. So now that we have everything selected, we can actually do a negative dehaze. So we can scroll to dehaze here. We can make a negative dehaze, and look at what that does. Okay, this is of course way too much, but we can just go a little bit of negative dehaze to add a little bit of softness just around. So look at that. That's just a tiny bit. Yeah, negative dehaze, it adds softness. So in some parts, for example, this part, maybe it's still a little bit too strong on the edges and not so soft. We can do again this radial gradient, Shift M on here maybe, and then we can say dehaze also here. And look at that. Maybe it's a bit too bright, and we can go to the exposure, and make it a little bit darker, like that. Yeah. So look at that, the difference. You see all those hard edges are getting softened now. And we can go to the crop again, like this part. Maybe I crop it in a little bit more. Something like that. Yeah, and then everything is very soft. The same with this part. Shift M again, and maybe do a little bit of dehaze also on these flowers. In that way you can make that very soft. So let's take a quick look to the before and then the after. Okay, so the before is the backslash next to the enter, for those of you who are wondering that. It's quickly showing the before, and then press it again, and then showing the after. You see, it's not so much changes, but look how much softer and basically more easy on the eye the image looks. Maybe even make it slightly brighter, and a little bit more vibrant. Yeah, and I'm already starting to like it very much. I don't have to do that much on the color. I can maybe change the greens a little bit, go to the color mixer, go to the hues, and maybe the greens like a little bit yellow, a little bit. You see how it changes a little bit yellow here. It's not that much difference, but it's maybe a slightly better color contrast in the photo. And this is just, I did it quite fast, obviously, maybe a little bit reduce the highlights. But I really like how it looks now, very soft. And you see, I on purpose made this composition, this middle part, with the green background so that it really pops out. Again, check the previous video if you want to see me take that in the field. But yeah, I really like how this came out like that. Maybe even this part a little bit brighter. Shift M, radial gradient, make that a little bit brighter, just a tiny bit. And then also here on this edge here, maybe very soft. Let's go full screen here with F. And I really like how it looks. So you see, we are using masks, very selective masking, and with that we create some dreaminess around, and brightness maybe on the subject. We can also go even more in depth with that, but this is you know, a short way to just make your images with dreamy flowers a little bit more dreamy, and some techniques to work on that. So let's go back and let's go to the next photo of this one with the bee here. Sitting on the pink blossom here, and I really like how it was just basically eating the pistils here in the flower. And this composition is actually not great, but it's often the case when we are shooting bees, because you have to realize they are super fast. They sit down, they move, they fly away again. So with this photo, it's really nice that I have a very high megapixel camera, because actually, if you saw this image in the video, in the previous video, you see that I cropped it a lot and I made it actually a vertical image. So let's do that right now. Actually, I want to make this image much brighter as well. You see the histogram, it's a little bit dark, but yeah, looks like I used a super fast shutter, 2.5 thousandths of a second, because I wanted to photograph also the flying bees. But yeah, it's a little bit dark, but no problem. We can just brighten the image a bit, and you know, look at the histogram, that you don't clip anything. Maybe the whites a little bit, the shadows, and you see we are moving up the shadows a little bit, and we are getting that detail here in the bee. Very sharp, actually. And yeah, like I said, I cropped it a lot actually in the original video before. So let's actually do that. So I actually cropped it on the vertical. So I can crop it kind of like that, and keep kind of the horizontal aspect ratio. But I wanted to make it a vertical crop. So let's do that. We unlock it here and make a vertical crop. So a little bit like that. And with this, I often like to crop it in a 4:5. So 4:5 format I really like for vertical. So let's put it on 4:5 and then kind of, you know, crop it like that. And that looks pretty nice. Let's press I. You see 4,500. Okay, that is kind of on the edge. The resolution is definitely lower. So I can actually maybe give it a little bit more space, and also keep in this one like that, yeah? So almost 5,000 pixels. It's actually still more than enough, especially for social media, but even for print, this is gonna look totally fine because it's a very sharp lens. You can see everything is very sharp. So that's a nice, nice crop, in my opinion. And then again, let's work a little bit on the dreamy parts. Let's increase the whites a bit, make the image much brighter. What ISO did I shoot this on actually? ISO 1000, a little bit higher ISO. So yeah, let's decrease the highlights a bit. Now the exposure is, I think, very nice. And again, let's work first a little bit on the dreamy parts around the main subject. Okay, so here we have the main subject. Okay, actually the background already super beautiful, super soft. Just this bottom part. So I can actually press M here, a little bit like that, and make that graduated filter here. And I can increase the blacks also. Look what happens. It makes it also more dreamy. Increase the blacks. And again, I want to make my negative dehaze kind of reduce all that, you know, that hard edges that I had there. So I can do it quite a lot. Also my blacks a little bit up. And then maybe even a little bit more blue and pinkish, a little bit work on the color. So let's look at the before and the after. It gets very, very dreamy around. Maybe a little bit less, because it's affecting also a lot this one. Kind of like that. All right, so that looks already very nice. So let's add a little bit of color, a little bit of vibrance. It's very pink image. Can actually reduce the contrast a little bit. And let's make even a little bit more softness around the main subject, what I did in the previous image as well. Radial gradient here, invert, and let's give it some softness here, a little bit of softness, just a tiny bit. Look at that, now the surroundings getting really soft. Let's do a quick before, very dark, after, much brighter, and softness added. Very nice, maybe a tiny bit more saturation. Yeah, really nice. Now let's work a little bit on this part here with the bee and the main focus point on the photo here. And now I'm going to teach you a little trick how I put a lot of detail in this bee here. So what I do is I'm going to press M again, bring up the masking panel, press the plus here, and then I'm going to select object. So let's select here the bee. So we don't need to be that precise. We're going to just do like kind of this. And I mostly care about the body, actually, of the bee. So now you can see, let's wait a bit. And Lightroom actually makes almost perfect selection of the object here, of the bee. Actually, this one not selected. So I'm going to just select this mask and then add. And again, object. And I'm going to add this part here. Also, now it should work. Not perfect, but yeah, it's okay actually. You will see when I do the adjustments, it will work fine. So I can actually just increase the exposure now of the bee. And look at that. Look how nice, even the little hairs, it looks very nice. And then I can add some color, some saturation, and maybe some contrast. Work on that bee a little bit. And what I can do is scroll down and add, in this case, a little bit of local clarity. And maybe even a little bit of texture, because the texture, it gives a little bit of, more texture to all of that hairs of the bee. So let's check before and after. And look at that. Wow, it's a big change, and maybe it's too much actually. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the amount slider and maybe decrease that amount slider a little bit. So something like that. Something like that. And if you later think it's still too much, of course you can work on it more, but this is kind of how I do that. So, and look at now what a difference, how much detail we can see in the bee. So let's check again the before and the after. Now go to the masking panel and check the before and after with the bee and look at the difference. Wow. You see, so you can make so much, you can add so much detail by using this very global adjustments. And now I'm just gonna make a little radial gradient here, very rough, and add some more color there in the middle. Also this little pistils here of the flower. Can make it just a little bit emphasis on that middle part. And look at the difference. All the attention is immediately going to that middle point here. Maybe add a little bit of contrast, something like that. So we are using select object to work on that bee. And of course, to finish it, we can add a little bit of noise reduction. We can also use the Lightroom denoise AI function, which works very good. And I talk a lot about it in my Lightroom course. I'm not gonna go in depth now, but it looks actually very nice. And now, actually, I would say the image is finished. It looks nice, and I think it looks very good. And now I want to show you one final thing, how you can cheat a little bit in Lightroom, actually. We can go here to the healing tool, and you see the remove tool, and use generative AI is filled in. And we can actually, for example, if we just remove this whole part, and let's press enter, and let's see what AI will do here. So we can cheat a little bit sometimes with this kind of shots, and sometimes it does a very nice job. Now it actually removed everything. Wow, that's actually crazy. Let's press another one, and let's press, actually they all look good. And you see all that clutter a little bit is removed with AI in Lightroom. And the shot now is super clean. Now, if you submit this to a photo contest, they will disqualify you. Let's make it clear, because this is not how the image was. But you can definitely get away with a lot of stuff here in Lightroom. I'm actually going to remove that now. I even think it's quite nice. But Lightroom AI remove can do a lot of things now. Okay, some very small things still. It's a little bit bright here, a little bit brighter than at the top. So I'm gonna just add one more big radial gradient here, make the top a little bit brighter, and probably make the bottom here with a big radial, not radial, with a graduated. I'm gonna make that a little bit darker and maybe a little bit warmer, something like that. Yeah, then the brightness of the whole image is better, a little bit better. Yeah, so I hope those tricks were useful. Just some small tricks to make your images more dreamy, this dreamy close-up flowers, and also to put some focus on the most important elements of the photo. Okay, so I hope you like those techniques in Lightroom to add a dreamy touch to your images. Maybe sometimes it was a little bit too fast. I didn't want to make the YouTube video too long, so just rewatch it if it was a little bit complicated. But anyway, if you want to see much more, like I mentioned at the beginning, check out my new Lightroom course with all the newest techniques, advanced masking, landscapes, cityscapes, HDR, panorama, animals, nightscapes, so much stuff in that course, and included raw files to follow along. So definitely check that out in the description. And again, still few days with a 10% discount, and after that it will go to full price, few bucks more expensive, not too much though, but it's still, I'm a Dutch guy, so every little discount works for me. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, put them in the comments below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.